traces, a circle in the sand, haven't spoken. Through the wise one's hand on the shore of oneness, I leave myself behind and step inside. And there are traces, a remedy divine, living waters. He unseals the choice wine, divine healer. His finger on the pulse of all mankind. And if thou lovest me, turn away from thyself. And if thou seekest my pleasure, regard not thine own, that thou mayest die in me, and I may eternally live in thee. Unravel secrets of unity and peace under the branches of the divine low tree, gentle breezes whispering celestial design. Approach the circle, its warm embrace on the shore of oneness, by the sea of grace, through rings of fire. I hold on to your hand and step inside. If thou lovest me, turn away from thyself. If thou seekest my pleasure, regard not thine own, that thou mayest die in me, and I may eternally live in thee. Eternally live in thee. Eternally live in thee.
Thank you so much, Fred. That was absolutely beautiful. I will speak for everybody if you don't mind. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our lovely, amazing speaker for tonight, Andréana Elise. So she is a poet, a freelance writer, an educator, and a community builder. Her work on her website, Language for a Lit World, focuses on healing from trauma and embodying justice through freeing your voice. She collaborates with artists and educators of all backgrounds to create spaces of refuge for the human spirit and growth. In this presentation tonight, she is going to share some insights and invite conversation on how to grow authentic, just, and loving communities to heal what divides us. So without further ado, Andréana, please.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction. I could not have asked for a more gorgeous piece of music to sing us into this presentation and gathering tonight. So thank you, Brett. Thank you, Layli. Thank you, Farouz. I'm very honored and overjoyed to be in all of your presence. And I just like to pause just for a moment before jumping into the actual presentation, just to kind of soak in each other's presence for a moment and really step into the circle of kindness. I think we all are in such dire need of human connection these days, and I'm so grateful for the technology. But it is so wonderful to just be in your presence. Is it possible to share my screen with everybody? Is that possible? Let's see. Can everyone see my screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to pull up slideshow, and this is just going to be sort of a jumping off point for our discussion tonight. There's going to be some readings, there's going to be some poetry, some stories. I hope people don't mind. I don't want to be the only voice speaking this evening. So I know some of my friends are in the audience as well. I may call on people to read. If you do not wish to read, that's absolutely fine. But I would just love to hear your voices if that's all right. So I was inspired, of course, by the invitation to speak tonight, and also by so many of the Baha'i writings I have currently been reading, where there is this urge to raise the cry out, sing out. And I keep thinking to myself, what does that mean? How can I do that when we all feel quite isolated, when there's so much dissonance and noise in the world? How can my little voice make any sort of a difference whatsoever? But yet it says that in the books that I'm reading, it keeps telling me to do that. So this is kind of an exploration of how we are channeling these teachings and these principles. You don't only have to be a Baha'i to believe in justice, in equality, in fairness, in love. These are things that so many people believe in. So I'm coming from a Baha'i vantage point, but really these are universal principles. So would someone mind reading this quotation for us? Vida, you are the next person on my screen. Would you mind reading?
Sure. Lift up your voices and sing out the song of the kingdom. Spread far and wide the precepts and counsels of the loving Lord, so that this world will change into another world, and this darksome earth will be flooded with light, and the dead body of mankind will arise and live, so that every soul will ask for immortality through the holy breaths of God. Abdu'l Baha.
Thank you. Thank you. So I chose this particular image to put here because she just looked so into the song that she was singing. And, sometimes religion can feel heavy, the world feels heavy. There's a lot of work to do. And when I hear this injunction to lift up our voices and sing out the song of the kingdom, there is joy, there is energy, there is life. And for me, those qualities are often embodied by the women in my life, especially older women. I have to say, they've lived and seen a lot, and there is this freedom that comes through wisdom and experience. And so anyway, I kind of liked her spirit, just to kind of urge us that it doesn't have to be heavy all the time. It doesn't have to be weighty. It can be uplifted. And moving on from that, when I was little, or young, I shouldn't say little, when I was younger, when I was still a teenager, I read this quote by Joseph Campbell, and he said to participate joyfully in the sorrows of the world. And I really was like this child when I read this quote, where I thought, how is that possible? There is so much suffering in the world. How are we meant to participate joyfully in these things? I couldn't understand it. It was very hard for me. And it's kind of stayed with me all of this time. How am I meant to be a happy and joyful being when so many people are without food, shelter, refugees? Now, of course, in the world of COVID, there is a lot of overwhelming difficulty and challenge, and yet we are told to be joyful. So this was always a puzzle for me. I couldn't quite understand it, but it felt like I needed to try. So in 2015, I was very lucky to be asked to serve at the Baha'i House of Worship for North America, which is located right outside of Chicago. And it is a house of worship meant for all faiths. Many of you have visited, I'm sure. And it is built by Baha'is, but is a gift for the world. And as I stood in this building and walked around it, there are things carved on the surface of the building. Statements from our Baha'i writings. There are the symbols of all religions woven into the fabric. And as I began to meditate on these statements, I realized that they weren't just nice sayings to uplift the spirit. They were meant to uplift the spirit, but they were also instructions. And on one of the doors, over one of the doors is carved these words, "The best beloved of all things in my sight is justice." And that's one of my favorite passages in the writings, also from the Hidden Words, which Brett quoted earlier in that beautiful song that he sang. And so I've really, over the years, been meditating, what does that mean? The best beloved of all things in my sight is justice. Baha'u'llah goes on to say that through justice, we see with our own eyes and not through the eyes of others. And I think that can be taken actually literally, that we actually need to look at each other in the eyes, to listen to each other, to see the soul. And I think that that is the first step in healing the world. We need policies, we need laws, we need all of it. We need the systems to change. But we need to start very intimately, of course, with ourselves, and then with the relationships that are around us. So, Brett, would you mind reading this next quote?
Incline your ears to the sweet melody of this prisoner. Arise and lift up your voices, that haply they that are fast asleep may be awakened.
Thank you. So again, many of you are familiar with the figure of Baha'u'llah, who is the founder of the Baha'i faith. And like all great religious figures, prophets, manifestations of God, you know, he was persecuted throughout his life because he sought to change the status quo and to speak truth to power and to challenge the power of the clergy and the politicians, and to say, you are not treating people correctly. This is not the way that the divine order is meant to be. And so he challenged them and was thrown into prison multiple times and exiled multiple times because he was speaking the truth, and people don't often like to hear it. So growing up, I often would read writings where Baha'u'llah, who is a messenger of God, would refer to himself as a prisoner. And again, it's really stayed with me, because in our society, prisoners are the worst of the worst. You know, we don't even see them as human. They're almost completely dehumanized. And living in America, the reality is mass incarceration. The reality is that over 2 million people are imprisoned in our nation. So at some point, kind of grew in my consciousness that I couldn't really speak out for justice or even know what justice meant if I didn't grapple with the fact of mass incarceration, in our country. So there was one thing I read into this passage, but the other side of this beautiful quote is, incline your ears to the sweet melody of this prisoner. This sweet melody that's so tender and loving and mysterious. And how can a prisoner who is going through such painful, difficult experiences, how can they sing beautifully? So it was, again, just kind of a question, and a mystery to me. But I again, just kind of set my feet in the path and wanted to know more. So this next section is some passages of poetry, people that I have encountered and known, and whose words really stayed with me, and I think they will be very meaningful for you to know that these are, poems from people who are in jail or who have experienced incarceration. And again, I'm going to ask if Layli, would you read this next poem?
Sure. My voice is my word, and my word is all I have in this world. My voice is for my loved ones and homeboys that I've lost. My voice is for all those kids growing up in the hood, telling them there is a way, when it seems there's no way out. My voice is for Black lives because they do matter. And my voice is for all lives too, because what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong.
You can continue, baby.
My voice is for making a change. My voice is dedication, determination, and discipline. My voice is educational, economical, political, and social development. My voice is what makes me who I am today. To pray, you open your whole self to one whole voice that is you. Who is your voice? Voice by Rod Darren.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Oak, would you read this next one? If you can you see the whole poem?
I sure can.
Okay.
I have the right to remain silent, but I'd rather speak on silence. I like the silence of the students who hid from the mass shooter, the silence on the island destroyed by the hurricane, and the moment of silence offered by 9/11. Silence roams inside an empty barn. It spins a web in the rafters. The silence of morning dew dampens the grass. There be a silence of fog that covers the day. Somewhere else, the quietness of a rainbow is fading away. There is a silence among the stars in the Milky Way. The silence of my spirit lives within me. The silence of my shadow seems to follow me. Tonight, I'll be still like a turtle that rests within its shell. In peace, I'll meditate in silence.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Lena, would you read this next one?
It is pleasing to the senses to see beauty, to smell beauty, to hear beauty, to taste beauty, and to touch beauty. What a wonderful thing it will be just to know the essence of beauty that lies within me. Beauty by Anthony.
Helen, would you read this last one for me? For us?
Sure. We are the fulfillment. We are serving and helping and being with each other, bringing to earth as it is in heaven. It is already happening. We are participating in the coming of this kingdom. That is how I look at service. What could be better? It is this joy that strengthens me, lights my fire. I want to be lit more and more, which means I have to go through more pain, more change. The process isn't easy, but I want to embrace it because it brings about growth. I have a hunger for the truth. Service by Mimi.
Thank you. Thank you all. You read so beautifully. So like I said, these are all poems written by people I've been lucky enough to know. Many of them from our local maximum security prison. Mimi is a remarkable story. She was in and out of the criminal justice system. She had been trafficked at a very young age. And she now is the founder and director of an organization called Love's Arm. And she assists women to get off the streets, to get into treatment, to really change their lives and heal the trauma and abuse of oftentimes decades. So they're all coming from very different backgrounds, very different places, but I think you can hear in all of their words that sweet melody that Baha'u'llah was talking about. I was always so amazed that often when I would leave the jail after a class, I'd often leave with very mixed emotions because it was a very sad environment, but we also often would laugh and have a good time, and such amazing insights would be shared, and that sense of having seen each other and having been seen was very present. So you've probably seen this infographic, just again illustrating the disparity in the racial disparities in our criminal justice system. And I wanted to show this because again, it shows that you can look at the same facts and interpret them in different ways. So one person could look at this and say, oh my gosh, this is terrible. We're treating human beings in these vastly different ways. And the fact that 1 in 3 Black men versus 1 in 17 white men have a likelihood of imprisonment in their lifetime, like there's something wrong with our system. While others may look at this and say, well, it seems like there are certain members of our society that are more prone to criminality. And so again, it's so important to know our history, to know the systems of injustice that have been in place, from slavery and the genocide of Native Americans to the present day systems of mass incarceration. The systems change, they morph, but the root of the problem has not been addressed, which is the spirit, the spiritual remedies. And again, we don't have to dwell on this, but I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention, and I'm sure many of you are aware that, currently too, the prison population is very much suffering under coronavirus, and that 1 in every 5 state and federal prisoners in the US have tested positive. And this was last year, so it's probably changed. But just to, again, just bend our thoughts around those people who don't even have access to the amount of freedom that we do. And, any way to support someone who is facing incarceration, a letter. There are many organizations that are doing a wonderful job in supporting our prison population. But I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. Paula, would you mind reading this next quote?
Did you say Paula?
I did say Paula.
Remember my days, during thy days, and my distress and banishment in this remote prison. And be thou so steadfast in my love that thy heart shall not waver. Baha'u'llah.
I just draw a lot of, there's nothing much I can say about this quote, except that I draw a lot of strength from it. And that, again, the manifestation, the messenger of God, experienced such anguish in his lifetime. And yet there was this constancy of love and devotion that he was bringing, that all of the great religions, spiritual leaders spiritual teachers bring to us, and that we have that to access at all times and under all conditions. More than any other time in my life, I think I'm understanding the presence of that. So we have just a couple more quotes, and then I'm going to open this up to discussion. Ilona, will you read this quote?
Abdu'l-Baha spoke of musical instruments, observing that all are imperfect instruments, but that Baha'u'llah brought to earth a heavenly divine instrument, whereon each soul could find a strike his own note, and whose music would be a heavenly eternal chorus. He called us to be those who hear the music.
I find this so comforting and inspirational. Like I said, with all the noise and dissonance and confusion in the world, it can be very hard to find harmony, to find peace, to find beauty. And for those of us who do hear it, and for me, I hear it when I'm in relation with people. I hear it in this gathering. And we started with such beautiful music. And even though I'm the one talking, I feel your presence. I hear your voices. I hear your hearts. And that's, I think, what it means to hear the music, this music of human fellowship. And when we're all channeling this beauty and this grace that is coming through us. So these are just two questions I'd like to offer all of you just to meditate on in your own time. What song is it in you to sing? What has been given, what gifts, what talents, what desires, what passions, are yours to give to the world? And then again, how do we fit our unique originality, our creativity, our souls, into this greater harmony? How do we weave together in our communities and relationships? So that's kind of what I wanted to then open out into a conversation in terms of really very practically, what are your next steps? How do you water the seeds of loving relationships, just relationships in your life? It could be very, very intimate, in your family circle, in your friend circle, with yourself. It could also be, getting out of your comfort zone and how you're building relationships across racial, religious divides, socioeconomic divides. So just, it can be anything. I would just love to hear kind of what you see your next steps are in the relationship building, community building arena. So I will just share the screen so we can say this final prayer together. So would someone mind just reading this for us?
I can read it for you.
Thank you.
Many a chilled heart, O my God, hath been set ablaze with the fire of thy cause. And many a slumberer hath been wakened by the sweetness of thy voice. How many are the strangers who have sought shelter beneath the shadow of the tree of thy oneness? And how numerous the thirsty ones who have panted after the fountain of thy living waters in thy days. Blessed is he that hath set himself towards thee, and hasted to attain the dayspring of the lights of thy face. Blessed is he who with all his affections hath turned to the dawning place of thy revelation, and the fountainhead of thine inspiration. Blessed is he that hath expended in thy path what thou didst bestow upon him through thy bounty and favor. Blessed is he who, in his sore longing after thee, hath cast away all else except thyself. Blessed is he who hath enjoyed intimate communion with thee, and rid himself of all attachment to anyone save thee. I beseech thee, O my Lord, by him who is thy name, who through the power of thy sovereignty and might hath risen above the horizon of his prison, to ordain for everyone what becometh thee, and beseemeth thine exaltation. Thy might, in truth, is equal to all things.
Thank you so much, lovely friends, for your attention tonight, for your contributions. We went all the way from each of us in our souls, how we find that justice outwards into the world. I've gained so much insight and so much joy just from being with you tonight. And I hope that you come away feeling refreshed and that it was not burdensome for anyone and not too long and not boring, I hope. So just thank you. Thank you so much.